my safe haven was the school library, and we had the most wonderful librarian, Mrs. Walsh. And fast forward to like last month, I attended Together We Teach conference, and I was introduced to Brooklyn Raney and her One Trusted Adult program. And I thought back to when I needed somebody, it was my librarian. I said, this is a perfect fit. So when we were putting this together, the Teen Summit, myself and my counterparts all over New England, I said, I have to get Brooklyn to come to a session. So I'm going to pass it over to her. I don't know, do I have I don't think, yeah, I think either Christy or Kim, you have to give her the reins, right?
She has it.
Oh, she does.
Brooklyn,
Okay.
you can
All
share
right.
whenever you're
Well,
ready.
okay. So
Yeah.
Brooklyn, thank you for being here. Take it away.
Deborah, thank you. It's really good to see you again. And I appreciate everything you just said. And it matches so much of what we hear, that librarians are showing up in big ways as the trusted adults for youth across this country. So I really am honored and excited to be a part of your conference. I also just want to give it a beat. I was able to pop in for the last 20 minutes of the speaker that you just experienced. And I saw in the chat, there's some stuff. So just want to pay honor to what you all experienced the last hour, and just maybe a community exhale together and before we jump into this. But I would love if you could say where you're coming from in the chat. I'm excited to see who's in the room while I set up my screen here. All right, Connecticut, Vermont, Texas. Amazing. Wow, all over. This is exciting. I love it. Thank you all. This is so great. Truly, truly an honor, and super excited to jump in. All right. So again, honored, excited. I'm extra fired up today. Yesterday, we partnered up with NELMS. I don't know if any of you are part of the New England League of Middle Schools. Some of you on here might be a part of that. My organization, One Trusted Adult, partnered up with NELMS to host a student leadership conference for middle schoolers from all over New England. And we hosted that at Southern New Hampshire University. So I'm still rocking some high middle school vibrations right now from that event. It was epic. It's called Start a Wave, and that is exactly what we did. 175 middle schoolers from public, independent, charter, Catholic, all kinds of schools coming together on building personal skills for community contribution and leadership. It was so awesome. And wow, there was just a lot of idea and excitement in the room for how they can go back to their communities and make a change. So I tell you that to say my voice is a little hoarse from that event, but my spirits are high. So hopefully that'll make up for my very deep voice. So my name is Brooklyn Raney. I am a mother, I'm an educator, a summer camp director, a mentor, and I'm here on behalf of what we call OTA, an organization that does really important work in the area of youth development, creating resources and programs for young people, and resources and trainings for the adults who raise, teach, advise, support, coach, and mentor them. This morning, I'd like to share with you some of our research and specific strategies and tools that help in building strong connections and always healthy boundaries with young people. From the lens of, I would love for you to look at this presentation absolutely from your primary professional responsibility as librarians, as educators, but also if you're a mentor outside of school, an aunt, an uncle, a parent, a guardian. I'm hoping that there's something here for you in all the ways that you show up to work with young people. This mission was born in a school auditorium. As an educator, I heard prevention program after prevention program that ended with somebody on that stage saying to the youth in my care, if you have a worry or concern, reach out to a trusted adult. And I've heard that term. I know that term. I understand that term. But there was something about this month of having 4 prevention programs in a row. I don't know if your schools, like all of a sudden we are like, we got to check every box and we're going to do like bullying prevention and substance abuse prevention and suicide prevention all in one month. It seems to get crammed into this one place. And it's usually February. And all these programs come in and they said this over and over and over again in this one month: seek out the help and support of a trusted adult. And it was on the 4th time when it really struck me. And I sat with that term and I looked around this auditorium and asked myself, do the young people in our care look to us as these trusted adults? And almost more importantly, do the adults that are entering this school building every day see themselves as the trusted adults that these programs are advertising us to be? And I knew at my school there was a gap. There was a gap and there was a need for us to show up and really intentionally invest in building connection. So I built a program from our own school, a staff training, to help educators build stronger connection with all the students in the building. And what happened was that it was right at the time when a history of neglect and abuse in youth serving organizations from across the country was being uncovered, decades and decades. Whether that was Catholic Church and Boy Scouts, independent boarding schools, we were hearing story after story of neglect, abuse, trauma happening in the very places that are set up to support and protect youth, abuse occurring. And so my educators, my team was pulling back, like, you're asking us to lean in and connect, but you see what's happening out there? Like, we don't want to get close to people's children. We don't want to be seen to be doing anything not right or not within our scope. And I knew, so at that moment, it was like, we had to have connection conversations, trust building conversations, along with appropriate and healthy boundary conversations. And in the research, what you see is there can't be trust without the boundaries. And the boundaries don't occur without a whole lot of trust. And so those two things have to come together in this conversation, specifically when we're showing up for other people's children. When I set out to build that program, or to really dig in on if this would be something that my team should address, I was blown away by the research. Young people who can name a trusted adult at home and at school are less likely to bully or be bullied. They are less likely to participate in risky behavior, and they're less likely to drop out of school. And they're more likely to be able to turn toxic stress into tolerable stress, remain calm in the face of challenges. They're more likely to be able to set goals and complete tasks, show interest in new things, volunteer in their communities. And they are better, they show greater sense, a greater availability for learning. All if they can name a trusted adult at home and at school. All these benefits, if we go upstream, away from the issues, away from focusing the prevention programs on the specific things, and I'm not knocking the prevention programs, I'm fully supportive of them, but it can't come without a true investment in what we know to be true about prevention and protection, which is our greatest hope, is relationships with all of you, community, connection. It sounds amazing. Let's do it. There's one problem. Young people are unpredictable and not always easy to connect with. My favorite word when working specifically with adolescents. So I'd love for you to think about the population, the age population you work with. What is your one word to describe what it's like to work with the population you work with? Mine is unpredictable. I'd love for you in the chat to throw out your word. What is it that could describe sort of how you show up and what you do with young people, or all the, there it is, chaotic. Yep. I feel that one. That was a close second for me. Dynamic, drama, energetic, hungry. Oh, these are awesome. Loose cannons. Yes. Okay. We're on the same page here. The same things are happening in the library that are happening in the dean's office. So we're not working with widgets and gadgets. We're working on humans with minds of their own that need to be honored and supported. I often wonder if other parents and educators and mentors are saying to themselves as often as I say to myself, like, wow, didn't see that one coming. I even said that to themselves recently, like, did not have that on the outline that was not in the planner. Did not see that coming. A mom the other day told me, She walked down her stairs and she was going to cook dinner, and she looked left, and her daughter was using Sharpie to put as eyeliner on her eyes. And she just kind of was like, huh. And then she turned right, and her son had stuffed Cheetos in his boxers, and not even like the regular kind of Cheetos. These were like the flaming hot kind of Cheetos. And she just was like, you know what? Tomorrow, if she was using Cheeto dust as eyeliner and he had Sharpies in his pants, like I wouldn't even be faced. Like this is parenting. This is working with adolescents. So my word, unpredictable. I don't know about you, but when I look at other people doing the work, engaging with youth, leading, like parenting, it looks like we're way more graceful. It looks way more easy. Of course, we're living in Instagram fantasy land where everything looks perfect and awesome. So when I look at other people doing what I'm talking about doing, I see this. This is my friend, Shantara. She's a mentor of mine. We co-direct a camp together. And this is her in Sunapee, New Hampshire, jumping off of this ladder onto a big airbag. She'll tell you it was 300 feet, but it was like 30 feet. It was nonetheless, we were both nervous. And she did it. And I was like, oh, wow, like I can do that. She just made it look so beautiful and fun and scary a little bit and exciting, but fun. And so I did it. And it didn't go as well for me as it went for her. And I know you're saying like, wow, I really wish we could get a zoom in of that to really, and you can. You're welcome, friends. You're welcome. Like, look at this. Look at this. Not cute. This, my friend, this is what most days as an educator and parent, as a trusted adult, feel like to me. Unpredictable, flailing through space, trying to figure it out, and not show to the young people that I'm absolutely terrified and have no idea what I'm doing most of the time. So after a rough day of parenting, I shared this with a mentor, how hard I was finding it. I'm flailing through space. It doesn't stop. I want to save them from everything. I want to protect them from everything. And I just can't do it all. I was finding it exhausting. And she, having successfully raised 3 children who were thriving, and with over 20 years in education, she said, there's a few things you need to know. There's a few things you need to know to get off this crazy train you're on. And I said, what? And she said, baby birds, Brussels sprouts, and pit stops. Of course, I said, tell me more. Baby birds, Brussels sprouts, and pit stops. She went on to explain first, you have to have a baby bird mindset. When a baby bird's born in the egg, it's got to peck its way out of that egg before it can fly the nest. And the mama bird just has to sit there and watch it. If mama bird or parent bird goes in and breaks open that egg for the child, they do not build the muscles they need in their neck to actually be able to fly successfully. So if the mama bird tries to help, well-intentioned, crack open that egg, the bird will never build the muscles it needs to fly. Her point of this was that they need to struggle to grow, so get out of the way. Probably you want to tell that to all the parents of the students in your school. You need that message less than they do, but it's a good reminder for us as adults in school buildings as well. They need to struggle to grow, so get out of the way. Let them pack their way. The second was Brussels sprouts. Lisa D'Amour, incredible author. She shares that there's a moment in time when the parents in a young person's life go from being the jelly beans to being the Brussels sprouts. That the parents and guardians at home adults go from being, they're like so excited, they can't wait for you to get home, you know, they're like waiting for you by the door, your jelly beans, your sugar, to this point where all of a sudden in adolescence, the parents, and I'm the proud mother of a 17-year-old, I am a Brussels sprout. Like I am now the thing on his plate that is so annoying, and it's there and it's good for him, but he doesn't want it. And he's like pushing it around and he's hiding it under the mashed potatoes and he's trying to get it away. Her point here was that in this moment of liberation, when adolescents start to push away and suspend the influence of their parents, it's natural and it's normal. But the hope is that they are then turning to other trusted adults in their life, relationships they've built, to be those mentors for them. So something else that's a little riskier, a little dangerous, not so good for them, is not filling that void. That these trusted adult relationships have been set up ahead of time. Her message for me with the Brussels sprouts was that, Brooklyn, you alone cannot do the job. Raising, educating young people is teamwork. You alone cannot do the job. And her last message was pit stops. Over time, as a parent, we go from driver to passenger to pit crew. We go, and the same elementary to middle to high school. We go from doing things for them to doing things with them to hopefully just being available when they need us. And we have a limited time to meet those needs when they show up. But the point of the pit stop parent, or the point of the pit stop professional, a youth serving professional, is that our role will change over time, but they need to know they can always stop in for a tune-up. And I'm sure you have those students that still come back to your space because there's something you provide for them. There's something that you meet for them, that your space provides, and they come back for that tune-up. And we hope that young people, as they grow up, know that they can always come back to recenter and have that foundation and experience that tune-up. So to be there for youth means to be impactful parents, guardians, educators, caregivers, trusted adults. It means baby bird mentality, Brussels sprout mentality, and pit stops. And it also means a strong understanding of the universal needs of youth, which we call the basics, the ABCs, which I'll share some of our trusted adult research we're doing, and caring modes, recognizing the number of ways we can show up and express care for young people. And that is exactly where we're headed with this conversation. Are you feeling it? You feeling all right over there? Okay. So the basics. Young people will seek to get their needs met with or without us. Young people will seek to get their needs met with or without us. This was really important for me, and I'm still always reminding myself of this. Whether or not I show up in a young person's life, they're going to seek to get the need met. They will find a way. They will work to find a way. So I began operating with this list of universal youth needs in my conversations with youth, and also in conversations with adults, and how they set up spaces. What we want to do is set up spaces where a young person can feel a sense of belonging and membership, ability to contribute, safety and structure, independence and control, competence and mastery, self-awareness, and community. Again, they'll seek to get the need met with or without us, sometimes in not so healthy ways, sometimes in really healthy ways, exactly how we would hope that they do. When we look at belonging, a young person can get that need met by joining some type of chat room, like an inappropriate place. I was just at a violence prevention summit, and they were talking about the concerns about the radicalization of youth online. There's a lot of young people getting that need met by finding dark spaces on the internet to feel a sense of belonging. They're going there looking for that if they aren't getting that met in other spaces. Our hope is they're getting that need met by being part of a book club, soccer team, part of the theater crew, drama club. Those are ways, healthy ways we can get that need met, but they'll seek unhealthy ways if not. So setting up spaces that build belonging, naming, greeting, showing interest, really crucial tools for this. Contribution. I had a library job back in high school. You all be proud of me. I was a support team on the library crew. Huge sense of contribution as a high schooler, that I had a job and a role. There are young people, I just talked to a principal yesterday, like there's these 3 students, they were stealing vapes from, I have no idea, a local store, or how they were getting their hands on them, bringing them to school. Everyone knew D period, this bathroom. These kids were saying, like, we felt needed. Like he uses this scale to talk to kids about what need led them to a choice that they made, which I think is a really healthy way to talk through choices. And they all landed on contribution. They felt needed. They were offering something that they could do. So where else might we be able to fill that need for a young person in a school? I always tell my amazing Pinterest teacher friends, love these people that decorate like the perfect bulletin board. I was never one of mine are like terrible, but I'm like, stop doing it for young people and start doing it with young people. Is there anyone you could invite, or could you set up a space where we work to build and decorate this space together? So we hit on that need of contribution. We often rob young people of a chance to meet the need because we've got the idea for the perfect thing in place. This happened to me. I mentioned I'm a mentor, and we go on adventures together, me and my little. And she said recently that she really wanted to make a scrapbook of all of our adventures together. And I was like, brilliant idea. I love this idea. Like, you could take so many fun pictures. This would be awesome. And so immediately my adult brain is like, I have a Shutterfly discount code. I can make, oh, this cute design. Like, I had all the ideas. And she comes out of her room with this like Mountain Dew stained spiral notebook. And she's like, I have the perfect book. And I was like, oh no, like I had to let go, even though I do these trainings all the time and tell everyone else, set up opportunities for youth to get their needs met. She was contributing in that moment. She had the idea, she had the notebook. Why did I want to put my adult expectation on it and say, let's do Shutterfly? Because I had a different idea. It had nothing to do with me. My job there is to get out of the way. And she made, like, we have the coolest Mountain Dew stained scrapbook you've ever seen in your life happening. And she feels great about it. Safety and structure. I wasn't planning to go through all of them, but I'm reminded of this moment recently. Teachers contacted, they were submitting reports of this one 9th grade student who was tardy, disruptive in class. You know the list of the behaviors that they reported. And when I met with him, he said, it's not my fault. It's so confusing here. Every class is different. Do we call the teacher by their first name or their last name? Sometimes hats are allowed, sometimes they aren't. Some teachers don't care about phones being out, some do. Some say to speak up, some say to be quiet, some say you can redo a homework or redo the test, some say you can't. Sometimes we're supposed to work together. Other times I got called for cheating because I talked to my friend because I thought it was a group project. It's so confusing. And it was such a reminder to me. Well, my response to him, this is a few years ago, not totally proud of this response, but as a busy adult, I was not showing my greatest sense of empathy. I said something like, well, in life, you're going to run into a lot of different people and different bosses, and they'll all have different expectations for you. And this is just preparation for life. And he looked back at me, and his brilliant response was, every 45 minutes. And, you know, he called me. Like, my expectations and what I'm supposed to say and do didn't change don't in my life now change every 45 minutes like he talked about. And I'm just back after a whole bunch of travel, and I was in like 4 different airports in 5 days, getting from here to there to there. And there was a lot of security, a lot of going through security. I was tardy. I was yelled at and made to feel totally stupid for not knowing what to do. Because between Boston and Tampa and New York and Cleveland, they all wanted something different from me. Sometimes it's shoes on, shoes off, electronics in, electronics out, no ID, just boarding pass, no boarding pass, just ID. I was standing beside a big sign that said, don't leave your bag. And this woman was screaming at me like, leave your bag, go, go, go. And at one point I actually turned and I said to a security guard, I just want to be a good passenger. I just want to be a good passenger, but I didn't know how. The expectations were ever changing. So much of the behavior we're seeing in young people is screaming, I just want to be a good kid, but help me meet my needs so I can do that, right? A safety, structure, predictability, and a team approach. All the adults working in a community with similar expectations to make it as easy to transition from one place to another on the youth we serve. And that is important at every single age. I won't go through them all, but young people are more likely to build trusted and sustaining relationships with adults who oversee and set up spaces where they have an opportunity to get these needs met. It's not about meeting the need for a young person. It's about allowing opportunities for a child to meet their own needs with your guidance, your support, and your thoughtful setup of space. And I was thinking a lot about what this would look in libraries. Like, how would you do a checklist on meeting all these needs, setting up in libraries? And then I was like, why am I going to tell this group of people? Because they are the experts in their space. And so I would love to brainstorm with any and all of you after on what are the really specific strategies and ways that you might look to build to meet these needs in your space, and that you're already doing. I'm sure all of you are keen to this already. So where we love to take this conversation, before I share some of our ABC research on trusted relationships with adults, is by going back, way back to your adolescent self, or whatever age population you work with. Go back to that little version of you. Think about what your hairstyle was like. Think about what kind of clothes you wore. Think about what kind of posters were on the walls of your room, what color your room was. Think about your life. Think about who you were. And then think about who was an adult at that time that you really wanted to make proud. Who's an adult that you did not want to disappoint? Who's an adult you wanted to share good news with? Who's an adult you would go to with a worry or concern? And if you think about that person, and I'd love for you to be thinking about someone outside the home, but if it's someone inside the home, that's awesome too. If there was no one, so I travel the world and run these trainings and talk to people about this and do tons of interviews. And in youth serving spaces, I find that about 40% of adults state that there was no one there for them, that they cannot name a single adult from their childhood. To these people, I say they are absolute superheroes. I actually wear, Deborah will remember, my Wonder Woman jacket. I wear this jacket in honor of people like you, because you are choosing to show up for youth in a way that no one showed up for you. And I honestly believe that is hero status. So if that is you in this moment, I'd like for you to think about, how does that fuel and inform the work you do with young people today? How does that fuel and inform the work you do with young people today? And if you do have someone that you can name, I'd love for you to put in the chat the role of that person in your life. Were they a librarian, a teacher, a neighbor, an aunt, an uncle, a coach, a piano instructor? I've heard it all, an employer. And what was it about them that made them trustworthy in your younger eyes? What was it? Awesome. Best friend's mom. Listening. Listening. Yes. Oh, high expectations. I love that one. Non-judgmental. These are awesome. Yeah, so trust was extended back. That's a really important one, Megan. Thank you. Trust was extended back. These are great. So you can see the number of ways. A lot of teachers, a lot of friends, parents, which shows up a lot. So if you have children and they have friends, think about how you're showing up for your children's friends. School librarian, love it. Awesome. Thank you. Keep those coming in. So for the last 5 years, I've been interviewing people all around the world, adults about the adults who showed up when they were younger, just like we're talking about now, and young people today about who's showing up for them now. What we're finding again and again is that we hear statements similar to what you're saying. My trusted adult was fair and predictable, always made me feel safe, was invested in my success, knew me and noticed me, made time for me when I needed them, challenged me when I needed it, and celebrated me when I deserved it. Taking all of the data, we found that 3 critical qualities of trust emerged. And beautifully, they emerged into something we call the ABCs. That the critical qualities of trust are accessible, boundaried, and caring. Whether the trusted adult was any of the roles that you mentioned, from theater teachers to librarians to, I see, peer mediation advisor, like all the ways that they show up, it didn't matter the role. Each of them was accessible, boundaried, and caring. Accessible, we define as approachable, present, able to be reached. It's not about unlimited availability and time. None of us have time for that. It's about advertising yourself as someone interested in healthy connection and building trusted relationships. It's young people will say it's the adult who puts their phone down or puts their phone away or closes their computer when the young person enters their space. It's about the adult that greets people at the door, that gets out from behind the desk. It's about the adult that plays. We hear about presence and playfulness over and over and over again. The kind of adult that makes it feel safe to make a mistake. The kind of adult that makes and keeps promises, that apologizes when they screw up. One of our greatest connection tools is to actually screw up in front of young people, expose that we are human beings who don't do it all perfectly, and apologize and model how to move forward. All accessibility. Boundaried, we define as operating within safe, appropriate, and healthy relational and sometimes professional limits. Yes, fill the chat with your accessibility ideas. Just Dance, Caitlin, I'm coming to your place. Yes, keep it going. I love this. Boundaries are a declaration of expectations and agreed upon way to live and work together. I know there's got to be some Brene Brown fans out there. Much of our research aligns with hers on vulnerability and courage and boundaries, and the bravery it takes to uphold these boundaries. Some people say Rosé all day. I say Brene all day. Yeah, like I could just read Brene all day. So boundaries, these are oftentimes we wait until someone upsets us before we share that was a boundary, that they overstepped a line, instead of having proactive conversations and preventative conversations. One of the biggest boundaries that I see getting blurry, especially with the mental health crisis that our youth are facing, and we all are facing today, is that educators and trusted adults in general, sometimes, if they aren't upholding these boundaries, they step outside of their role and play the role of mental health professional or, therapy doctor. And I see this disrupting the relationships and really not being best practice in terms of protecting youth and protecting you, right? Protecting youth and the adult. We like to say possibility over pathology. That a mentor, a trusted adult, an educator, and maybe some of you on here are trained mental health professionals. I am not. I'm coming to you like the average educator, mentor, auntie showing up in a young person's life. I don't have those skills as a mental health professional, and I can do damage if I even pretend or try. The same way you wouldn't want me to fly a plane. You wouldn't want me to train you for a marathon. That would be a bad idea. I don't have those skills. The same way I don't have the skills to do therapy. My relationship with a young person can be therapeutic without pretending to be therapy. This incredible professor shared recently, the trusted adult's job is when a child is in crisis or sharing something tough, our job is to just deflate the balloon a little bit and get them to the next step. That's the trusted adult's job. Deflate the balloon a little bit and get them to the next step. And often that's with listening. We have something called levers: listen, empathize, validate. And when something's over the line, we explain, we report, always following our mandated reporting responsibilities, and then we support through that, right? Once we've handed off that situation, we continue to support. I have another young person that I'm mentoring who always wants to share with me all of the horrible, terrible, no good things that are happening in her life. I think it's just the way that she has connected with adults in her whole life is by sharing about her anxiety, her ADHD, her eating disorder, her an assault that occurred when she was younger. Every time she gets in my car, it's like, my life sucks. This happened, this happened, this happened. And I have to constantly adjust. The good news is she has an amazing mental health support team. She's got strong at home grandparents who are caring for her that are on it. And so I get to say, name of child, remember, like, I'm so honored that you share that with me. I'm so glad that you trust me enough to share this information with me. But remember, my job in your life is defender of your potential. It's all about possibility, dreams, goals. So I get to talk about what you want to do to get to do what you want to do next. And she literally every time is like, oh, right. I forgot. Because she starts to treat me like her therapist. But if I don't have the boundaries to redirect that conversation, and again, validate, empathize, and say, that sounds like it's really hard. And I'm so glad you have Cindy to talk to about those things. And we're going to focus on this. And then she's like, okay, so I was thinking about nursing school, and can we start making goals, and could we go? And yes, absolutely. That is my role in your life. So I think young people need to be trained and taught what the different boundaries are with the different adults in their life. It's not totally intuitive, and it doesn't totally make sense. At-home adults are different than at-school adults. At-school adults are different than in therapy, mental health professional adults. Whole other thing we could do on that. And people are recommending mental health first aid training, 100%. Awesome. So lastly, caring, defined as concern for and investment in the well-being of another. Caring the feeling is pretty simple. Caring the actions, not so simple. And I'm going to get more into that in a second. But most importantly, it's the overlap of these qualities where trust is built and burnout is beat. See, it's our only hope to show up in this work for the long haul with young people is to be accessible with the boundary and caring with the boundary. Accessible without the boundary sounds like I'm always available. Call me anytime. We don't mean that. So what instead we should be saying, here's how to reach me. These are the times I'm available. And then showing up and being 100% present when you've said that you'll be there. Caring without the boundary can sound like, I will do anything for you. I will do anything. It's my Meatloaf song for the morning. I will do anything for you. Where caring with a boundary sounds like, here's what I can do within the scope of my role to support you. And if what you need is beyond that, I will help you find the person who can help. I got one Meatloaf fan in there. Thanks, Anna. Thank you. So I will do what I can to care for you within the scope of my role, but I won't do that. Yeah, Leanne, no, they all know. This crowd, I like this crowd this morning. The ABCs. So think about your role, do some self-reflective practice on how am I being accessible, boundary, and caring. Take this back to your staff. Say, for our culture, for our students, what do we agree upon as being accessible, boundary, and caring with youth? What's appropriate in our space? And then talk to young people about it. We have tons of free resources on our website that have worksheets and different ways to engage in conversation with youth. We had one school put up a bulletin board. They had a March Madness bracket of trusted adults from media, from entertainment. So it was like Mr. Miyagi faces off against Dumbledore, faces off against Gandalf. And they all had to say why they were accessible, why they were boundary, why they were caring. What an awesome way to engage in a really important conversation with youth through the fun characters that they know. Okay, we talked about the basics. Let me just check time. Yeah, we've talked about the basics. We've talked about foundations and critical qualities of trust, the ABCs. And the other big question I get from parents, teachers, trusted adults is, what do I say? Like, what do I actually say? What are the words I use to make sure I'm connecting in appropriate ways? My first response always is less, because as you all listed, listening is such a huge component of this work. So the first thing to do is to say less. Our second favorite phrase to offer to trusted adults is there something you think I can do to help, or do you just want me to listen? So empowering the young person and inviting them to tell you how they want you to show up for them. More questions, less answers. More questions, less answers. Don't be an advice dumper, or as my amazing Boston husband will say, don't be an advice dumper. Thinking about what questions you can ask, the guiding, the motivational interviewing we can do to get people to a place instead of telling them how to do it and what to do. My work studying care now in my dissertation studies has been absolutely fascinating, because along with there being a gap in the number of students who can name a trusted adult at school, we are seeing this big gap in even just the sense of care. So a principal told me recently that she just did a survey, and 96% of her teachers say that they care for their students. I have questions on where the other 4% are, but 96% of the teachers in the building say they care for the students. But only 30% of students selected yes when asked, do you feel cared for at school? Just this general question of, do you feel cared for at school? Only 30% of students said yes. I see this in a lot of places. This is one principal I was talking to, but there is a gap between the adult expression of care and youth reception and recognition of that care. So what we've found are 4 caring modes. We've been transcribing moments between adults and young people, recording and transcribing, and coding and looking for how many modes does an adult go into? What are their levers and their strategies and ways in and the communication they use to express care to a young person? And what we found is there's cheerleading, there's challenging, there's comforting, and there's coaching. None of these modes are right or wrong. We all lean in certain ways, but they're like inhaling and exhaling. They're like day and night. They all require each other to stay balanced. And I'd love to run through with you what we've found, and think about yourself, where you lean. Some people will say, oh my gosh, I'm all this way with my own children, but I'm all that way with other people's children. So we show up differently. And I'll tell you a story at the end of like how to use this, but I just want to run through each of the modes first. Coaches, leaning towards coaching. Coaching builds confidence in young people by helping them build skills. They're skill focused. They assist young people in setting goals, assessing those goals, and dreaming big. The shadow side, if we go too far as coach and we stay in coaching mode all the time, or a coaching mentality, is that we can be too future focused, and independence and control can be lost for the student if the coach begins to want to achieve the goal or dream more than the student does, right? Like that moment when I want the shutterfly, this is a small example, but I want the shutterfly scrapbook so bad, and my idea of it overshadows the young person doing the thing and my healthy coaching. Cheerleaders. Cheerleading can earn the trust of young people quickly through positivity and praise. I'm a lot of cheerleader. If you can imagine, you hang out with me a little bit, like I'm a lot of cheerleader. We're able to redirect kids from focusing on their failure to instead focusing on their strengths, talents, unique gifts. The shadow side, as you can imagine, of being a natural cheerleader is we can sometimes be accused of being toxic optimist, a little toxic positivity. We can tend to gloss over failure or obstacles with look on the bright side kind of attitude, which means there might be missed learning moments. We can also be in cheerleading mode so much, and students are so used to hearing positivity and praise from us that when we do have to challenge or give some tough feedback, they lose a lot of trust in us because they're so not used to hearing it. Challengers hold young people accountable through they do this through a communication of their potential. So in the chat we saw they had high expectations of me. They showed me they believed in me by challenging me to do more. Challengers inspire young people to work hard because of that high standard. And in terms of risky behaviors, challengers may provide the exact intervention needed, which can help a young person actually feel cared for. Even though we're calling them on a behavior, we're holding them accountable, it might be exactly the kind of care a young person's in need of in that moment. The shadow side of challenging is when someone does something well, we're less likely to say something because they're just doing what they're supposed to be doing. And in challenging mode for too long, people may be less inclined to come to this person with their problems and their worries or concerns. And when overused or taken too far, it can feel diminishing to the person on the other side. Comforters are the expert listeners. They provide comfort and a sense of settling. They help reveal insights and make kids feel seen, feel valued, and that their well-being is of primary importance. The shadow side of comforting is rescue mode or savior syndrome. I'm recovering, savior syndrome. It can be easy to slip into want to fix something rather than aiming to help teach or create space for learning. So what we gain from categorizing these tendencies is an awareness for our leanings, a recognition of possibility for building capacity in other areas, other modes, watching people seeing their craft. How did they do that? How did they reach that student? What was the way in? As a school administrator, I use this language often, especially in conversations with advisors and with my school counselor. If I was coming down and had to challenge a young person about a rule violation and then was feeling like I need to get them back to class, but they're seeing me in a certain way right now because I had to be the challenger, I could call on the counselor and say, can you swing by my office and do a little cheerleading or a little comforting? And then she might be calling me because she's got that student in her office again for the third day. And she knows she's got to get her back to class, but she's gotten a little too comfortable in the counselor's office and she doesn't want to go back to class. She might message me and say, can you come by and do a little bit of coaching? Like, I've gained ground with her, but I need some support. It gives us language, common language. And we're seeing really good results in our e-course because the e-course is the same for educators as it is for parents and at-home guardians. So different in parts of it, but the content is the same, and it's giving families and schools similar common language to talk about what kind of care and support the common young person, the child and the student, might need from all the adults in their corner. Call it peanut butter jelly approach. We're just going to surround them and squish them and just keep pulling every lever to see what it is they need and what it is that might work. So when we are doing this unpredictable trusted adulting dance, if we aren't succeeding, we adjust modes. We call on supports and we try and we try and we try again. And I'd love to offer you a story to wrap up before I could take a couple questions. On the weekends in the winter, I lead snowshoe tours for fun. I know what you're thinking. She's a good time. Good time. Friday nights on the mountain. This was one night I will absolutely never forget because I met a young person who taught me so much. There was a big storm and we had a whole lot of snow and about 40 people showed up. It was chaos and it was awesome. I was handing out snowshoes and this family came in, parents, grandparents, cousins, everybody. And I'm handing out all the snowshoes and young, one male identifying student comes up to me. We'll call him Buddy for this story. He's about 13. And I hand him snowshoes. And in my greatest cheerleading mode, I'm like, this is going to be awesome. We're going to have such a fun adventure. Here's your snowshoes. And he says, I don't need them. And I said, they're really useful. Everyone's going to be wearing them. You can use them. Here, I'll show you how to use them. I'm in coaching mode now. No, thanks. I said, you seem a little down. Is there anything going on? Anything I can help you with? Make you more comfortable? I'm in total comforting mode. But he says, nope, just don't need the snowshoes, lady. So now he's called me lady. So I'm like, poof. I said, well, there's been a big storm. I'm going to challenge you a little bit on this. If you don't want to take them right now, it's okay, but I'm going to put them on my backpack. I'll bring an extra pair because you're going to need them. And all he says is, we'll see. And I was like, oh, we'll see. We'll see. So we travel up this mountain, and it's my favorite kind of hiking because we take the chairlift up to the top and then we hike across and down. It's the best. So we get going. And as you can imagine, Buddy starts post holing. For those of you in Texas, if you don't know what post holing is, the New Englanders know that post holing is when the snow is so deep and you don't have the snowshoes on and your leg just drives down into the snow. So I'm on sweep. I'm at the back of the line, which means me and Buddy are going to have a time together. The group has taken off, and here we go on our journey. This is not an actual photo of it, but this is the best photo I could give you to represent what I mean by what's happening. Step after step, his leg is driving down into the snow. He is actually having to use his arms to pick up his own leg and pull it forward for every single step, moving at like slower than a turtle's pace. I'm just taking deep breaths and deep breaths. I've offered the snowshoes. He said, no, I'm fine. He is not fine, but he will not take the snowshoes. There's a scientific term for this I learned afterwards in my research. It's called an escalating commitment to a losing course of action. An escalating commitment to a losing course of action. How awesome is that? How many of you have been there before? I will admit, I have been there. Or worked with students who have been there. It's when we've made a decision, an initial investment, a statement where this is it. And then we find out later we've made a bad choice. But instead of reevaluating, we double down. This is where Buddy was. Double down, escalating commitment to a losing course of action. Needed to prove that he could do it. But as it got darker and colder, and I was starting to really worry, I had to pull out full challenger mode. Like he was not responding to any other modes. And I said, listen, you're either going to put on the snowshoes and we're going to get out of here, or I'm going to have to call safety patrol. And you and I together are going to get in a sled. We're going to wrap up in a blanket. There's going to be a big red alarm as they bring us down the mountain. Everyone will see. 13-year-old Buddy's like, give me the snowshoes. I am not getting in a sled with this lady. So I give him the snowshoes. He straps them on and he takes off. To the point he's moving so fast. He turns around and he says to me, wow, these things actually work. I have never felt more like I wanted to toss a child off a mountain than in this very moment. And I was like, okay, one trusted adult author launches child off mountain is probably not a good headline for our book. So I just kept breathing and kept walking. We get near the bottom. It's time for hot cocoa. I'm like, oh my gosh, we made it. We actually made it. I see him ahead of me. Just before he gets to a place where anyone can see him, clip, clip, takes off the snowshoes, steps out of them, and walks away. Did not want anyone else to see. Did not even want to turn around to admit to me that he had worn them. He wanted to make sure everyone knew that he got through on his own without them. I let him have that. But we caught up to the group. I ran into the parents. I was exhausted. I was frustrated. And they turned to me and said, wow, how did you do it? Like, we wanted to come help, but he's really not that into us right now. So we figured we would just make it worse. So we just kind of left you out there, but we were hoping that it would be okay. And I was like, he's not that into me either. But I pulled every lever I had, and he finally responded to one. And they said, you're going to have to teach us about those levers, because we had bet there was a 90% chance he was just going to sit in the lodge on the phone and not experience snowshoeing. And we're so grateful that he did. And although I was exhausted and frustrated, I had forgotten, I missed because of that. Like, we did get up and over that mountain. We did complete the task, and it was hard and it took everything I had, but we got there. They told me I deserved a tip, and they never actually gave me one. So if your buddy's parents out there, you owe me at least a 20 for that moment. But when I reflect on this mountain moment, I realize that far worse than post-holing yourself is watching someone else post-hole. especially when they have the resources right in front of them to prevent them from doing what they're doing. If we use that metaphor for real life, imagine your child walking towards their dreams, their definition of success, and imagine they keep post-holing, getting sunk by the many obstacles that will inevitably come their way. A good trusted adult can recognize what that child is in need of and step up accordingly. Or if we can't recognize their need right away, we just start using every tool we've got and we reach out to other resources, which are other trusted adults in the child's life. We've got to provide all 4 C's for all young people to ensure that they feel cared for. And we've got to teach them about those 4 C's so they can recognize what care might look like. All right. Do you ever walk out of a talk or click out of a talk and say, what now? What do we do now? I've got my trusted adult to-do list ready for you. So I am asking you and inviting you, 1, to tell youth about your trusted adults. If you name someone today that you haven't talked about in a long time, tell young people about that person, honor them through doing it, teach young people about what good trusted adults that are living the ABCs look like through your story. And I also encourage you to go back and thank that person. And if you can't thank that person, thank their children. And again, just honor their story and what they did for you by showing up for other people. Second is to ask young people about their trusted adults. Big difference in assuming young people have trusted adults versus asking them. If you're part of a school, we have something called Operation OTA, like an assessment you can run with lesson plans and again, downloadables and things to support this mission. If at home, as parents and guardians, if you're filling out emergency contact forms, a great way to ask young people who their trusted adults are is to invite them into that conversation. Who do you want me to put on your list as trusted adults to call if I'm not available? Sparks really important and awesome conversation. And lastly, talk to other adults about this mission. There are other people out there who are not in schools or specifically in youth serving organizations who can show up and help and support and be trusted adults for young people. This is not all on teachers. This is not all on educators. This is on humanity. This is on communities to show up and help young people get their needs met so they don't go looking for unhealthy spaces that put us all at risk in seeking to get their needs met in unhealthy ways. And if those people want to know how to do it, what to do, the most simplest way to think about it is to be who you need and to be who you needed. I want to thank you all so much. I have not been able to keep up with the chat, so I will go back through to see. And if there's questions, you can reach us at info@onetrustedadult.com. We have an e-course, book. We have a middle school advisory curriculum that's also used for leadership and mentorship groups. And we also have Branch Out, which is for high school. It's all about building personal skills for community contribution and leadership. So thank you all so much. This is a fun, lively group. And if anyone wants to stick around, ask questions, or sing Meatloaf together, I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
Thank you so much, Brooklyn. This has been really fabulous. Judging from the chat, I think everybody else thinks so as well. So I encourage you to go to the website and get the book.